Sword Art Online is garbage. The story sucks. The writing is lazy. The characters are shallow and boring. The pacing is all over the place. Nothing in this show works. It had a cool idea and completely screwed it up. The main character is a blank-faced power fantasy with no real personality. He wins every fight, just because. No effort, no tension. The rest of the cast is even worse. Everyone either worships him or fades into the background. They're not characters. They're props. The show jumps from one idea to the next, like it's making stuff up on the spot. One minute it's life or death. The next it's a dumb love story or a pointless side mission. Nothing sticks. Nothing matters. The stakes disappear, and so does any reason to care. The action is cheap and empty. It's just flashy moves with no weight behind them. The animation tries to distract from how little is actually happening. The music is loud but forgettable. The romance is awkward and forced. The dialogue is cringe. The world building falls apart the moment you think about it. Sword Art Online is all style and no substance. It's a mess from start to finish. It wastes its own potential and wastes your time. The game design in Sword Art Online is just as bad as the anime itself. Every single one of the fictional games is a joke. The mechanics make zero sense. Nothing is balanced. Nothing is thought out. If these games were real, they'd crash and burn on day one. There's no real strategy, no depth, no logic behind how anything works. Boss fights are just random messes with no real mechanics. Skills appear out of nowhere. Systems are explained once and then ignored. It's like someone threw a bunch of half-baked ideas into a blender and called it a game. The worst part is how obvious it is that the author has never touched a real MMO. No one who's played even a basic RPG would come up with something this broken. There's no sense of balance, progression, or real player interaction. Guilds and parties are just background noise. There's no real economy, no proper quest design, no PvP structure. Nothing works the way a real game should. It feels like a fake game made by someone who only heard about MMOs from a second-hand story. There's no love for the genre, no research, no effort. Every time the show tries to get into game mechanics, it just exposes how clueless it really is. If you actually want some good animated movies to watch, check out the How to Train Your Dragon series. These are top-tier animated fantasy films that actually respect the audience's time. Based on the novel series, they tell a real story with heart, depth, and characters you can actually care about. The world is rich, the animation is stunning, and the soundtrack hits hard. Every film builds on the last in a way that feels earned. The characters grow, the stakes matter, the emotional moments land without feeling forced. This is how you do fantasy right. It's got action, humor, real emotion, and none of the lazy writing or empty flash you get with something like Sword Art Online. These movies deliver every time. There's honestly no reason to waste time on Sword Art Online when you could be watching something that actually deserves your attention. Don't settle for trash when greatness is right there. In this video, let's dive into the most recent movie, How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. This is the final chapter in the trilogy, and it goes out with style, heart, and real emotional weight. No shortcuts, no cheap tricks, just solid storytelling.
How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World is a 2019 American computer animated action fantasy movie. It's loosely based on the 12-book series of the same name by Cressida Cowell. Additionally, it's the third and final installment in the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy. In this video, let's take a look at some How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World Easter eggs and trivia. Let's start with the movie's subtitle, The Hidden World. If that reminds you of Jurassic Park's The Lost World, or the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle novel of the same name, you're on the right track. In fact, it might remind you of King Kong's Skull Island, or Journey to the Center of the Earth, or The Land That Time Forgot, or just about any primordial realm, where there are tons of creatures that we think are extinct living in a natural paradise, free from the interference of pesky modern man. Looks like the people at DreamWorks wanted to give a tip of the hat to all the properties that established this trope for them. Hiccup says there were dragons when I was a boy. This is a reference to the opening line of the first How to Train Your Dragon book. If you haven't read the books, you may be surprised to hear that Astrid, Hiccup's love interest and resident hot tomboy of the franchise, was created solely for the movies. Writer Cressida Cowell confirms that she is loosely based on the character Kamikaze from the books. While Kamikaze is lifted from the Japanese word kamikaze, the name Astrid means divine beauty and God's strength in Old Norse. You may notice that one character from the original movie, Tough Nut, sounds a bit different in The Hidden World. That's because Justin Ruppel has taken over the role from TJ Miller, who has gotten some pretty bad press in the last few years. Other Norse references are included in the movie to give it that fantasy Viking feel that we've all come to know and love. For example, characters often say things like "for Thor's sake" or "oh my gods" with an S, to remind us that the Vikings were pantheists, worshipping Thor, Odin, Loki, and many other Norse gods who may or may not have become superheroes in the MCU. And speaking of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's another nod to it here, specifically when Hiccup says Berk is wherever we go. This mirrors the moment in Thor Ragnarok when Odin says that Asgard is not a place, it is wherever the Asgardians live. Anywhere could be Asgard, just like anywhere could be Berk. The self-deprecating humor of the Vikings is clear throughout the franchise. That's why there are characters with names like Snotlout, Fishlegs, and Hiccup, but you may not have noticed that this extends even to the name of the village. Where Hiccup and Toothless live, Berk, which in this movie has grown to a very sizable city, is a British slang slang term, meaning twit, prat, or a number of other less polite terms of derision. Snarlow mentions that people who fly with babies are the worst. This is obviously a joke about flying on an airplane with a baby on board. It can be quite annoying to be seated near a baby on an airplane. Although he might sound Russian, Grimmel is voiced by veteran American actor F. Murray Abraham, famous for his Oscar-winning portrayal of Antonio Salieri in the 1984 movie Amadeus. This movie reveals why Toothless is the last living Night Fury. Grimmel hunted and killed all the others. This explains why the Book of Dragons from the first movie had no information on Night Furies. Grimmel is assisted by 6 creatures called Death Grippers, whom he controls with special collars they wear. The Death Grippers are rumored to be based on the Scorpions in the classic fable The Scorpion and the Frog. Another famous member of the cast is Royal Shakespeare Company veteran and former Time Lord David Tennant. He voices Spitelau Jorgensen, father of Snotlau Jorgensen, who is one of Hiccup's buddies. David Tennant is actually the one who narrated a series of Hiccup's adventures on audiobook. Oddly enough, a big chunk of time and effort went into modeling the beards of the characters, especially that of Hiccup's father, Stoic the Vast. Sources close to the production say that Stoic's beard alone took months to create. It's clear that the animators put a lot of time and effort into these movies. Another shout out to earlier material happens when Toothless meets the Light Fury and tries to impress her by drawing a picture of himself in the sand. This is a reference to the first movie, when he draws a picture for Hiccup. In this movie, his art skills have definitely improved. Some fans like to point out that the movies differ pretty significantly from the books. For example, in the books, Toothless was much smaller, but for the movies they decided to make him bigger and more impressive, so Hiccup would look better riding him. Another major difference is dragon communication. In the books, the dragons have their own language, but for the movies they made them communicate physically, to make them more like animals. Although the appearance of Toothless is based on a combination of a Black Panther and Stitch from Disney's Lilo and Stitch, his behaviors are based on the movements of puppies, cats, and horses. Thus he seems familiar in some way to just about anyone who has ever had a pet. Many fans hope to see the villain of the second movie, Drago Bloodfist, and that was the plan in the early drafts of the script. Writer-director Dean DeBlois wanted Drago to be the primary villain again, but be redeemed by the end of the movie. It was Steven Spielberg who convinced Dean DeBlois that a redemption arc would take up too much screen time, and the idea was scrapped. Fans of Drago will just have to be satisfied by catching a brief glimpse of his bewilderbeast living happily among the dragons of the hidden world. Hiccup and Astrid end up together, and at the end of the movie we see that they have a son and daughter. Although it's not mentioned in the movie, Cressida Cowell confirmed that their names are Zephyr and Nothing. We see that the kids are initially afraid of dragons, probably because they've heard that their grandfather Stoic was killed by one, in a callback to the final Shrek movie. A montage of scenes from all of the How to Train Your Dragon movies rolls during the end credits of the Hidden World. It's a clever end to the franchise that is sure to stir up lots of nostalgia for any fan. DreamWorks did a lot of things differently with this franchise. For example, each of the How to Train Your Dragon movies has been distributed by a different studio, first Paramount, then 20th Century Fox, and now Universal. This is actually the very first DreamWorks movie ever distributed by Universal, and the first ever released in February. They usually go for summer or holiday openings. They must have known they had a winning story on their hands when DreamWorks co-founder Steven Spielberg said he almost couldn't finish reading the script because he was crying so much. This is not the first time DreamWorks has created a franchise based on a trilogy of animated movies. They've also given us Shrek, Madagascar, and Kung Fu Panda, each of which is a huge sprawling marketing empire in its own right, with a runtime of 104 minutes. The Hidden World is the longest DreamWorks movie, a record previously held by the 102-minute How to Train Your Dragon 2. Apparently, viewers were ready for the longer runtime. A poll taken by the online ticketing site Fandango ranked this movie as the second most anticipated animated movie of 2019, just behind Toy Story 4. The unseasonal release has done nothing to harm The Hidden World at the box office, with a current worldwide box office gross of $175 million. Its Australian opening day total of $1.5 million is a record surpassing the previous champion Shrek 2. It's possible that fan anticipation was hyped up even more when writer-director Dean DeBlois posted on his Instagram back in November, 85 days before the release date, that the movie was fully complete. One very small expense of the production was for the sound effect of the Terrible Terrors. The voice actor for that was a Chihuahua named Paco from Cottage Grove, Oregon. Paco was paid the princely sum of $100 for his yappy services. Fans were also pleased to learn that, as with the previous movies in the franchise, the musical score was composed by John Powell, who received an Academy Award nomination for his work on the first How to Train Your Dragon movie. Critics have given the movie very high marks as well. It briefly enjoyed a Rotten Tomatoes score of 100%. After the initial blush of excitement, it settled down to 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a very respectable 70 out of 100 on Metacritic. All of the How to Train Your Dragon movies enjoy a Rotten Tomatoes score of 90% or better. Quite an accomplishment for any movie franchise. Well, that's it for this video. What did you think of How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World? Let me know your opinion in the comments below. Also, let me know which is your favorite How to Train Your Dragon movie. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos. Also, don't forget to turn on notifications for my channel so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
As you can clearly see, How to Train Your Dragon is miles ahead of Sword Art Online in every possible way. While How to Train Your Dragon offers heart, excitement, and genuinely moving storytelling, Sword Art Online stumbles through a mess of cliches and painfully predictable plotlines. It tries to present itself as an emotional, high-stakes adventure, but instead comes off as a shallow, juvenile fantasy with no real substance. Simply put, How to Train Your Dragon soars with creativity and emotional weight, while Sword Art Online is nothing more than a lifeless, recycled mess that somehow got popular despite having nothing of value to offer. And if you're looking for another awesome movie from DreamWorks that actually knows how to have fun, check out Trolls World Tour. It's colorful, energetic, and unapologetically entertaining. Everything Sword Art Online wishes it could be, but never comes close to achieving.
Trolls World Tour is an American 3D computer animated adventure musical comedy movie. It's a sequel to the 2016 movie Trolls. If you're unsure about the ending, then you definitely came to the right place. In this video, I'll explain the ending of Trolls World Tour. This video will contain spoilers for Trolls World Tour, so make sure you watch that movie first before watching this video. Anyways, let's get started. Queen Barb finally obtains all 6 strings, and puts the last string on her guitar, and has a huge concert. All of a sudden, Branch, the K-pop gang, and the reggae trolls show up to crash the concert. Queen Barb attacks Queen Poppy, but Branch sacrifices himself to save Queen Poppy, and he gets turned into stone. However, Branch breaks out of the stone and he turns into a rock zombie, which is the true power of the guitar. Afterwards, Queen Barb turns a bunch of trolls at the concert into rock zombies. It looks like Queen Barb has also turned Queen Poppy into a rock zombie, but it turns out that Queen Poppy was just faking it by putting gumdrops in her ears. She was able to trick Queen Barb into giving her the guitar. Queen Poppy tells Queen Barb that a world where everyone looks the same and sounds the same is not harmony. Queen Poppy destroys the guitar and drains all the color from the world, reverting the trolls back to their original form. Queen Barb says that Queen Poppy has also destroyed music. It looks like history has repeated itself. Pop has ruined everything. But Cooper's heart is beating and it creates a rhythm. All the other trolls start beatboxing and clapping to the sound of the heartbeat. That's the lesson of the movie. That music was inside the trolls all along. Queen Barb can't take that away from the trolls. Music comes from our experiences, our lives, and our cultures. Queen Poppy starts singing, and this encourages the other trolls at the concert to start singing as well. The color is returned back to the world, as the other trolls start singing with Queen Poppy. Eventually, Queen Barb also joins the sing-along, and all the other trolls are able to put their differences aside. Queen Poppy tells her father that she should have listened to him, but her father says that he's glad she didn't listen to him. Queen Poppy wasn't naive about the world. She was brave enough to believe that things could change. Queen Poppy and Queen Barb decide to become friends. Queen Poppy tells Branch that they love how they're different, and they also confess their love to each other. Finally, there's narration from Queen Poppy about how all the trolls were divided, but the ancestors were wrong. We have to be able to listen to other voices, even when they don't agree with you. It's all our differences that make the world a richer place, because you can't harmonize love. So the whole plot point about Queen Barb trying to find 6 different strings is very similar to what happened in the 2018 movie Avengers Infinity War. In that movie, the main antagonist Thanos was trying to obtain 6 different Infinity Stones. Unlike Queen Barb though, Thanos was not able to set his differences aside and team up with the heroes. That movie had a completely different ending. Anyways, the message of this movie is pretty clear. You're not always going to agree with other people, but you should still listen to what they have to say, because our differences make us unique. Our differences make the world a much richer place. In fact, you shouldn't always agree with other people. Sometimes you have to be brave enough to do things that nobody else has ever done before. Queen Poppy was able to change the world because she didn't listen to her father. Moreover, I'm pretty sure that the whole music element of this movie is simply just a metaphor for racism. Queen Barb believed that the rock trolls were superior, and she wanted to turn all the trolls into rock zombies. However, she learns that she was wrong, and she has to accept the different kinds of music that the trolls have. In real life, there's a lot of racism and xenophobia happening, but we have to accept that people are different. No one race is inherently better than another. Another question, will there be a Trolls 3? Well, nothing has been confirmed yet, so that's not a question I'm able to answer right now. Universal Pictures and DreamWorks Animation didn't announce a sequel to Trolls until several months later, so if they do the same here, then we should be able to find out towards the end of the year. The whole virus situation is causing movie theaters around the world to shut down, and people aren't really going to the movies, so it's highly likely that this movie will end up flopping or underperforming. I sure hope that's not the case, but it does put the chances of a sequel in doubt. What did you think of Trolls World Tour? Let me know your opinion in the comments below. I personally thought it was pretty good. The animation quality was great and I liked the voice acting. Additionally, the music was fantastic. Well, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a future upload. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.